This week's parsha is Parshas Shemois. We start Chumash Shemois, defined by the Ramban as Sefer Hagolus v'Hageula. But today's topic is a lamdish sugya with extreme halachic relevance. And we're dealing with a sugya essentially of machalot asurot. How is it associated with this week's parsha? HaKadosh Baruch Hu promises Klal Yisrael in the words of Moshe Rabbeinu, V'oimar ala eschem ani Mitzrayim al eretz haknani achiti u'amoiri aprizi v'achivi v'hayevusi al eretz zovas cholav udvash. In B'chores Davova Midbeis, the Gemara discusses how would it be permissible to drink milk. According to the Masoros of Chazal, the origin of milk is in dam, is in the blood. Dam nechar v'nasa cholav. So dam is also. How would it be permissible to drink milk? And the Gemara brings a raya from this posuk, Eretz Zovas Cholav V'Dvash. The Torah wouldn't praise the land of Israel, the land of Eretz Yisrael, with something that is prohibited to enjoy. So this proves that Cholav is mutar. And that is the basis of today's Shiur. If not, we find a posuk Eretz Zovas Cholav V'Dvash, we would say that dam is also, so is Cholav, because the origin of Cholav is dam. We do not say ponim chadoshes ba'ulekan. Blood is blood, and milk is milk, and milk is not blood. Because milk originates from blood, it would still be prohibited. And this brings us to a big malchokes between the Rishonim brought twice in the Rosh. Shuvas Rosh Chov Dalet Vov B'Kitzur Nimratz Ba'arichus Sechet Brochas Perek Vov Simen Lamed Hey. It's all about musk. Musk is a fluid, a liquid that is found in some animals. It's a deer. And once again, according to the Rosh, this substance originates in blood, and blood by a biological process. It's not our doing. It is the doing of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. It is biology. But the origin of musk is blood, just like the origin of milk is blood. Rabbeinu Zrachi Alevi the Baal Hamor assered musk. And musk was used not only in cosmetics, in perfume industry, but also as a tavlin. And it was put into various foodstuffs. And it was consumed. It was edible. And according to Rabbeinu Zrachi Alevi, it's also because it's the Isra of Dam. The Rosh brings Rabbeinu Yoina, Ponim Chadoshos Ba'u Lekan. And it doesn't matter what the origin of musk is. It is not blood. It doesn't look like blood, it doesn't taste like blood, it isn't blood. And therefore, Ponim Chadoshos Ba'u Lekan, and it's prohibited. And Rabbeinu Yoina proves his point from Raglei Devoirim. When we buy honey today, the honey is pure. But obviously in days of yore, there were always particles and parts of the bees that were in the honey, especially part of the bee's feet. And afal piken dvash is mutar, because dvash has this tendency or this nature that when part of the bee's body is in the honey, it turns into honey. So Rabbeinu Yoina says, what is the heter of consuming honey? Ponim chadoshes bo'ulekan. The same regarding musk. Mogan Avrom, Reish Tezayin, Sif Kotten Gimel wonders, why would musk be different than milk? If not, we have a posuk in the Torah that it is permissible to drink milk. We would say milk is also. We do not say Ponim Chodoshes Bo'olakan. Why would musk be different? That is the kash of the Mogan Avrom. And what Rabbeinu Yoina proves from Raglei Devoirim is different, because Pirsha Ba'alme, it's not fit for consumption, and therefore there is no Isser. So what would Rabbeinu Zrachi Alevi, his opinion was that it's also to use musk. What would he respond to the sugya of Raglei Devoirim Bidvash, in the honey? Probably he would say there is an other Rosh, which is also a Toises and Avodah Zorah, Samech Tesumad Aleph, Rosh, Perek Avodah Zorah Simen Yud Aleph. Both Toises and the Rosh say Ragli devoirim, even be'ein, are not prohibited. It's like wood. It's a dry bone. It has no meat. It's not ru'ui lamachal. It cannot even be defined as a foodstuff. And therefore there is no isser to consume, to eat raglei devorim. So we cannot prove anything in the concept of ponim chadoshus bo lekan. So this is a fundamental machlokes between the Rishonim. When A is transformed into B, is the isser on A, does it go over to B? Or maybe the isser evaporates. It is no longer. Because cholav is not blood, musk is not blood, honey is not part of the bee's body. It was, but it is no longer. So this is one big discussion regarding raglei devorim, the concept of ponim chadoshus ba'u lekan. There's another concept that we find in Tmura Daf Lamed. And regarding this concept, I will presently bring 6 different sources. And in these 6 sources, it's not that A turns into B. It is that A turns into nothing. A is no longer edible. It is no longer considered a meichel. It's no longer considered foodstuff. And therefore the prohibition is gone. It is no longer relevant. Tmura Daf Lamed is a machlokes Tana Kama and Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer v'chachomim, Vlad Treifa. A calf that was born from a mother that was a treifa. Treifa. Not an impure animal. Not behemois temeos. Not a donkey or a camel. From a cow. But the mother was a treifa. Is the calf osor or mutar? According to Chachamim, mutar. Rabbi Eliezer maintains Vlad treifa osor. And then there's a machlokes Rav Huna and Abaye, machlokes between Ameroim. A little chick that comes out of an egg when the mother hen was a treifa. Is a little chicklet the same as a calf born from a cow that was treifa, or would it be different? And the machlokes is 2 extremes, the 2 poles. Rav Huna says everybody would agree that the little chicken, the baby, is prohibited. Even Chachomim that say Vlad treifa mutar, this would be worse. Abaye says the opposite. And Abaye says, before the little chicken comes out of the egg is pirsha ba'alma. It is no longer fitting for consumption. So when that living creature develops in the egg, in the embryonic stage, it's not ra'ui la'achila, and therefore it is pirsha ba'alma. And the little chicken, I don't know what it's called, is mutar. So we find the concept pirusha ba'alma, and I want to explain. There is a concept of shelo kederech achila. Shelo kederech achila is also midirabanan. Shelo kederech achila is when it's still food. It is even food that is fitting for consumption. But the way he eats it is shelo kederech achila. And the Rambam gives 3 different examples of shelo kederech achila in Perek Yud Daled Macholos Asuros. One is he consumes food when it's boiling hot and it burns his mouth and throat. The food is delicious. You just need to wait. Wait till it cools off. Example number 2, he eats raw meat. It is fitting for consumption, but you need to cook it. You're not a carnivore. You're not an animal. People cook food, cook meat. They don't eat raw meat. And example number 3 is Erev Dabay Dovar Omar. He put some bad tasting food or substance into good food, and in practicality, it's not tasty. But the Machonas Asuros into itself is good, is fitting for consumption. That is shelo kederech achila. We have another concept, einer ra'ui leger, food that became somewhat rotten, moldy, decomposed, and it is no longer ru'ei la'achila. But essentially, it is food. It's not tasty, but it's still food. Pirsha is I don't know. I don't know the English word. It is tsoya. It is perish, and it cannot be defined as food as all. So that egg, before the little chicken comes out of the egg, is pirsha ba'alma, and therefore it would have no isser at all. It's not like musk. It's not like milk. It's not like leidovoidum. It's not A turning into B. A is still A, but it is no longer defined as food, and therefore there is no Isser Darabonon. Ein Eru'u Leger is Osam Darabonon, according to the Rambam. Shaloke Derech Achile definitely is Osam Darabonon. Pirsha Ba'alma is not Osir at all. And we have various different examples. Simen Pei Zayin Sif Yud. Kibo, the stomach of a cow, after it is salted and dried, no longer is defined as bosa, and there no longer would be an issue of bosa b'cholov. So you could have milk held in the stomach, the intestines. I don't know exactly which part of the stomach is used, but if it's totally dried out, the Ramo says, ke'etz ba'alma, pirsha ba'alma, eitz ba'alma, different words, but in essence they're the same. It is totally dry. It's like wood. It's like rock. It no longer is defined as food, and therefore there is no Isser. Chalav hakeva, Semepei Alav Sivav, Pirsha ba'alma. That's the third source, Pirsha. Like the Sugyan Tumure Daf Lamed. Pei Dalet Siv Ches. Insects, bugs, worms, after 12 months, no longer are prohibited. There's an Isser of Shrotzim. But little insects after 12 months, and the Hagdorah in the Shulchan Aruch is Afra Ba'alma. It is like dust, it's like sand. So we find three different definitions. Pirsha Ba'alma, Eitz Ba'alma, Afra Ba'alma. But it all boils down to the same fundamental idea. Next source. Fish, almost all fish, feed on other fish. It is an interesting fact. Carnivores are also ba'achila. All the behemoths and chayas ksheris are herbivores, feed on grass. Any animal that kills other animals is prohibited as minim tameim. The same regarding birds. All the raptors are also ba'achila. Fish are different. Even dugam ta'irim eat other fish. So if you have a dag tor, it has snapevikas keses, but in the belly of the fish we find a dag tome. Is it permitted for consumption or not? If the dag tome in the belly of the dag tor is intact, is whole, it's also. But if the digestive process already began and it's not whole, it's mutar. And why is that? Pirsha ba'alma, as explained by the Taz and the Shach. So we have three different expressions. Three are pirsha. One is afra ba'alma. One is eitz ba'alma. The common denominator of all these sources is it was machalois asurois. But at the present stage, it is no longer ma'acholois. It can no longer be defined as food. It's like wood. It's like rock. It has no taste whatsoever. It is totally dry, and therefore there no longer is an Isser. Two different concepts. The first three sources we brought, A turns into B, but it's still good, it's still delicious, it's still edible. Parts of the B turned into honey, blood turned into milk, blood turned into musk, into a different liquid, a different fluid. It is a biological process, a chemical process, nothing with the doing of man, of human beings. And that is a machlokes, Rabbeinu Yonah, Rabbeinu Zrachi Halevi. What is the halacha? Is a huge controversy. The Magen Avraham Reish Zayin that I quoted rejects Rabbeinu Yonah. And he says, why would musk be different than milk? How would I be miyashiv Rabbeinu Yonah? I think Rabbeinu Yonah would respond and say, yes, Menasvora we would say, milk originates in blood, it should be also like blood. But the Torah is matir. How do we define and understand and interpret the heter of Eretz Zovas Chola V'Dvash? Is it a chidush ve'en lecho boi ele chidushoi? Or our understanding would be, that is exactly what the Torah teaches us. Ponim chadosh is ba'u lekan. And that is an av lekol mokem acher. And like the Torah permits milk, even though it originates in blood, the same would apply to musk. And from milk we learn to musk. We learn to raglei devorim. And our understanding is not gzeres akosov chidush ve'enacho boi ele chedishoy. This is the principle the Torah teaches us. So what is the halacha? Mogen Avraham rejects the opinion of Rabbeinu Yonah. Sam Sofer has three tshuvas that contradict each other. Orach Chaim Kuf Lamed Hey. Sam Sofer supports the Mogen Avraham and he says, Ein halacha ke Rabbeinu Yonah. We cannot rely on this heter. However, Yored Deyasim and Kuf Yud Zayin, he agrees lahalacha with Rabbeinu Yonah. Tshuvas Chasam Sofer Cheregov Simachov Beis, he agrees with Rabbeinu Yonah. It is more clear in Yored Deya Kuf Yud Zayin. But it seems to be the case in Chelik Vav Simachov Beis. And the Chassam Sofer, Orach Chaim Kuf Lamed Hey, writes that the Rosh brings the Rabbeinu Yonah in the Tshuvas and he is Choylek and he rejects him, which is not accurate. The Rosh deals with the Rabbeinu Yonah twice. In the Tshuvas Chav Vav Daled, it is very, very short. But in the Tshuva, he agrees with Rabbeinu Yonah. He doesn't even bring those that disagree with him. However, in Chidushei Arosh, Piskei Arosh Masechet Broches, when Rabbeinu Yonah brings a raya from Ragle Devorim, the Rosh says, "Venere sherayosoi tzorech raya, arvachu arvet tzorech." So Rabbeinu Yonah is not choylek. The Rosh is not doiche divrei Rabbeinu Yonah outright, but he is mefakbek. He is somewhat skeptical. Rayosoi tzorech raya. But the other Rosh, in Tshuvas Rosh, agrees with Rabbeinu Yonah. This is not the opportunity, but I did write a big arichas. How do we deal with the great Rishonim when what they write in one sefer contradicts another? So the question is twofold. Chidushi Arashba against Tshuvas Arashba, the Tshuvas override the Chidushim. But the question is, when a Rishon has two sforim, one is Shalas Tshuvas Halocha L'Maisa, and the other is halachic decisions, not commentary on Shas. And this is the case with the Rosh. The Rosh and Shas is psukim. It's piskei harosh. Contradict Tshuvas harosh. So the Chassam Sofer and two Tshuvas paskins in accordance to Rabbeinu Yonah. One Tshuva he rejects him. The Rosh and the Tshuvas agrees with Rabbeinu Yonah, and in the Chedushim he doesn't reject Rabbeinu Yonah, but he is mefakbek. Rayosoi tzorech raya. So the Mogen Avraham is choylek on Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbi Ovadia Yosef has a monumental tshuva, Chelik Ches, Yoredesem and Yud Aleph, and Kedarka Bekoidish. He brings many, many sources that agree with Rabbeinu Yonah, and his conclusion is halachic Rabbeinu Yonah. And this is extremely relevant, and I just want to briefly mention two different shaylas that were discussed at length. One is a modern shayla that our generation, right here and now, need to deal with. The other is somewhat an older discussion, and that is gelatine. So gelatine for many years is produced from bones and from the skin of animals. Baruch Hashem, Achshar Dora, today, people that demand kashrus, our community is huge. It is big, it is huge, it controls a lot of money, and therefore, many products that once were questionable really weren't glad. Today, we have the power, and the industry really wants to cater to the needs and demands of the huge body of consumers that demand kosher food. So we have kosher gelatin. But for many years, the only gelatin available was made of bones and skin of non-pure animals, non-kosher animals. Is it permissible or not? So the most substantial tshuva is in Achiezer, Chele Gimel, Simen Lamed Gimel Ois Hey. The Achiezer in that tshuva refers to a different tshuva he wrote in Chelik Beis Achiezer, Yoredei Simen Yud Aleph. But in Simen Yud Aleph he doesn't deal directly with gelatin, but with other products, but he does deal with gelatin and Chelek Gimel, Simalamet Gimel that I quoted. He doesn't even mention Rabbeinu Yoina, and his approach is not Ponim Chadoshes Bolakan, but rather Eitz Ba'alma. And at the beginning of the tshuva, he quotes what the Shoyal, the Rav that turned to Reb Chaim Oizer. And obviously we don't have his letter, but we have basically what he argued, because the Achiezer relates to his arguments. And he based his leniency on Simen Pei Zayin Sif Yud that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. Kibo Shenimlach Venes Yabish. It becomes Eitz Ba'alma. Reb Chaim Oizer says, our Shaila is far more permissible and we have more leniency, because to begin with, we're dealing with bones and skin, which are not fitting for consumption. They're not edible. So the Shulchan Aruch deals with the stomach of an animal, which is flesh, which is meat. However, it is dried out. But dealing with bones, we could have far more room for leniency. Reb Chaim Oizer is Mekatza, but I want to explain where he's coming from. Yes, the Ramah says Eitz Ba'alma and it's mutar, but the Shach Sif Kot Lamed Gimel says Lechatchila ein la'asos ken. B'di'eved it wouldn't be osur, but Lechatchila we should stay away. Pischei Tshuva Sif Kot Yud Aleph goes far more to the extreme, and the Pischei Tshuva says it's only mutar regarding kavush, but if it's cooked with milk, it's osur. So that wouldn't solve the problem of gelatin, which is not only cooked, it is produced, it is part of the food that reaches our table. Noide Miyuda Madura Kam Yordeh argues, Kibo, there is no Isser Basa B'cholav, but if it would be from a treif animal, it would not be permissible. So to base the heter on gelatin on the Ramah is very, very questionable for three reasons. The Shach, Pischei Tshuva quoting Tiferes Tzvi, Noide B'Yehuda, and therefore Reb Chaim Oizer prefers to go in another course, in another direction. We're dealing lechatchila with atzamais, with or, which aren't through alachila, and that is why he is a matir gelatin. He does not mention Rabbeinu Yoina. Reb Chaskel Avramsky wrote a very important tshuva. Tzitz Eliezer Chelik Daled. I can't tell you which siman. Many times I apologize, I don't remember Simonim, but this time I can't tell you which siman because it does not have a siman. It's not in the actual sefer. It is in the introduction to the sefer. Harav Waldenberg, Hagon Harav Waldenberg, prints a letter of recommendation, Haskoma, Michtav Brocha that he got for Rav Chaskel Avramsky, and he also prints a tshuva about gelatin. And why is this so important? Because Rav Chaskel Avramsky was primarily known as a Rosh Hashiva, primarily as a Marbitz Torah. And his main work that he left the world is Chazoin Yecheskel and Tosefta. He did not write many tshuvas, but this is one of the most important tshuvas that he wrote. And he deals at length with gelatin. At the beginning of the tshuva, he says, any comparison to Rabbeinu Yoina, to Purim Chadoshes, to musk, is not relevant. Because in musk, the concept of Purim Chadoshes is when A turns into B. It's a different substance. It is different in essence. Chemically, it looks different, it tastes different, it is a different substance, and therefore we totally disregard the origin. But in gelatin, the chemicals we use and the entire process is just to break it down, and we use a certain ingredient, but that ingredient is in its original form. And therefore, Reb Chaskel Avramsky goes in the path of Reb Chaim Oizer. The heter is based on Eitz Ba'alma, Pirsha Ba'alma, Afra Ba'alma, which is the second concept I dealt with at the beginning, at the first part of today's Shiur. I mentioned the tshuva in Bia Omer. The Bia Omer does argue, Ponim Chadoshes Ba'u Lekan. It is totally different. And this vikuach tests the limit of Ponim Chadoshes Ba'u Lekan. In my opinion, it's a question of Savora. We do not have clear rice. The only three sources we find, ponim chadoshes, are blood that's transformed into milk, blood that's transformed into musk, feet of bees that become honey. They're different than gelatin. So gelatin is somewhere in between Pirsha ba'alma, Etz ba'alma, and Ponim Chadoshes. All the sources we quoted about Pirsha, Eitz, Afra ba'alma are not very complicated chemical processes, but simply drying something, leaving it in the sun. An insect after 12 months. Nisiyabesh. The only source which is biology is source number one, Tamur Daf Lamed, the egg. So the flesh, the meat of the egg becomes not fitting for consumption before the live animal comes out of the egg. That is the only pirsha which is a natural process. All the others are very simple processes, which is drying something out. So the process of producing gelatin is far more complex. I won't go into the details, into the practical details, but it's a question of svara. Is it Purim Chadoshes or merely Eitz Ba'alma? The Achiezer, Rav Avramsky argued Eitz, not Purim Chadoshes. Rav Avadia argues Purim Chadoshes. I do not have a firm opinion. And I think if our only heta would be based on Purim Chadoshes, it would be somewhat questionable. But I agree with the heta based on Eitz Ba'alma, Pirsha Ba'alma, Afra Ba'alma, as explained before. So this is a question that Gedolim have been dealing with for 100 years. The other question is cultured meat. And this is on our table. And I wrote a few chuvas. So let me just explain. Very likely that this will be the meat of the future because it has so many advantages and extremely powerful bodies and organizations would promote cultured meat. We produce meat in a laboratory. There will be no need to slaughter and kill hundreds of thousands of animals every year. There would be no need to raise hundreds of thousands of animals every year, which takes up a huge amount of resources and so much gas emissions. So the green organizations are excited about cultured meat. The Tsar Balachayim organizations are excited about kosher meat, and ultimately it will be a huge money saver because it's quite expensive to grow cows, to feed them, and then to process their meat. Not right now, but ultimately cultured meat would be far more inexpensive to produce and to buy. So on cultured meat, we take a cell and we cause that cell to multiply and to grow. Technology and science has devised the methodology to try to play the role of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I say this somewhat with humor. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the creator. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu could create Yesh Ma'ayin. But in so many areas, we step in ways Shaloi Sharom Aviseinu, our forefathers couldn't even imagine. And I just mentioned IVF and PGD and understanding the genome and genetic testing and genetic engineering. In cultured meat, we find a way to take the place of blood. Our blood gives energy to the cells, and the cells grow and develop. In a natural process, that is biology. I say scientists, have developed matzah gidul. Maybe I don't have all the terms in English. So we take out a single cell, a stem cell, and let it grow and develop in serum. Serum is part of our blood. Without red blood cells, it's transparent, it isn't red. And then the serum is substituted with other particles and other substances. And we take one cell of meat and encourage that cell to reproduce and to multiply and to grow. So without going into the technology and the science, many questions come up. Is it considered meat regarding basar b'cholav? And could we take that cell from an unkosher animal or from a kosher animal that wasn't slaughtered? And I've wrote a few tshuvas because some of the companies developing this meat are from people and they want to adhere to halacha. If cultured meat will be available to the world, if possible, and I stress if possible, should be available to from people who wouldn't touch anything that is questionable regarding kashrus. So let me just share with you fundamentally what my opinions are without going into many details. It definitely is meat. Meat is meat regardless of how it came to be. One Gemara in Menachos Samech Tes, grain that fell out of the skies, fell out of the clouds. Sanhedrin Tes, Reb Shimon ben Yetzodek the Tan is walking and two lions charge him. And his life is in mortal danger. Suddenly out of the heavens, two big chunks of animal meat fall out of the skies. And the lions devour the meat, and he is spared. Interesting story. He sits on the side. Instead of running for your life, running away, he sits down. He is confident, because obviously Kodesh Baruch Hu is watching over him. It's not natural. Where did this meat come from? Fell out of the skies. So he feels totally safe. He sits and looks. The lions eat their share and they fall into a slumber. And some meat is left. He takes that and he brings it to the Beis Medrash and he asks, is it kosher or not kosher? So let me just share a very simple sentiment. Reb Shimon ben Yetzodek sees there are leftovers. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows exactly how much every lion will eat. So why did he send more meat than the lions need? So Reb Shimon ben Yetzodek understands he has to do something with the leftovers. There is a halacha that needs to be decided. He takes whatever meat is left, brings it to the Beis Medrash. Mutar or osur. We don't know what type of meat this is. Ein dover tome yored min hashamayim. It is mutar. And then he asked him, what if a donkey will fall out of the sky? The response was a cynical one. A donkey came down, let it go back up. Interesting. But what I argue, in Menachos the question is it kosher lemenachos? But nobody questioned maybe it's not grain. Maybe it's not chito. Maybe it's not meat. Meat is meat, regardless whether it came from an animal or out of the sky. Grain is grain, even if it fell out of the clouds. So Shemen Zayis of Adlokas HaMenoira, Etzel HaChashmenoim was Shemen Zayis of Neis. Didn't come from olives. Shemen Zayis is Shemen Zayis, regardless of how it came to be. I know that one could argue maybe a miracle is different than cultured meat. I don't think so. Meat is meat. If you examine it in a laboratory, it looks like meat, tastes like meat, and chemically, it is meat. These are meat cells, no different than natural meat cells. It's the fabric of meat, and therefore to me it's clear it's meat, and it's basar b'cholav, unlike what some other rabbanim write. I must say, and this is a general statement, I'm not mentioning names, cultured meat, even that tiny little cell, it's just too small, it's microscopic, but it's a meat cell. It is ra'ui la'achila. It's too small to feel its taste. Aval yesh bo ta'am v'reach. Some of the tshuvas written in this sugya ein behem ta'am v'reach. So I totally disagree with those that say it's not meat and it's mutar with chalav, and isser diuraisa of basa b'chalav. Could we use non-kosher animals? No. And this once again tests the limits of ponim chadoshus ba'ulakan. And in today's shiur, I brought two different examples. One is when A turns into B. A is fitting for consumption, so is B. B might be better than A, but it's different. Blood turned into milk. Blood turned into musk. The feet of bees turned into honey. That is A turning into B, ponim chadoshus. The other concept is A stays A, but A is a horrible A. A number one was good food, delicious food. A number two is not fitting for consumption at all, to the extent it could no longer be defined as food. Cultured meat, A is A. It's not pirsha ba'alma, it's not eitz ba'alma. A is A. It is true. In the process of causing the cell to multiply, maybe at some stage it wouldn't be ra'ui machal, but that makes no difference. It is a very well-known chavas das, and Yoreh Deis Mekuf Aleph. If you develop A in any process to be fitting for consumption, to be better, to be tastier, even though in some stages along the process it's not ra'ui l'achile, it still would be defined as machoras asuros. So with cultured meat, we take one cell and we bring it to 1,000,000 cells or 100 million cells. If we're talking about letters A and B, Aleph and Beis, B'derech Moshe, I would say, an Aleph Ze'ira turned into an Aleph Raboso. You know, in a few places in the Torah we have small letters and big letters. Aleph Ze'ira ad lema'od, a tiny, tiny, tiny little Aleph, was transformed into a mountain Aleph. But Aleph is still Aleph. A is still A. A did not turn into B. And A did not turn into Pirsha, Eitz, Afra Ba'alma. A is still A. It was small, it became big. And therefore, I understand this is a very complicated technological process. And I can say with full confidence, Rav Avadia is wrong. The Yabir Omer feels ponim chadoshus ba'ulakan. But I also think that the Achiyez and Reb Chatzkel Ramsky have a powerful point. So to me, we're dealing with a chashash d'oraisa. No room for leniency. As long as we don't have a raya, a decisive raya, tzorech lachshoy shleis d'oraisa. And therefore, my psak is you could only use cells from kosher animals and from a cow that was slaughtered that had shchita. The questions are far more complex than what I discussed today. But the nature of this shiur is not halacha l'maisa, but rather sharing with Talmidei Chachamim and Ohavi Torah the fundamental questions and chedves d'shmaitza. So I think we'll stop right here. So today we start Chumash Shemos, and Chumash Shemos is all about Golus and Geula. And we find a Shem that is found nowhere else in the entire Tanakh. When Moshe asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm going to come before my brethren, before the people, and say HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent me, and they will ask, what's his name? After hundreds of years in Golatz Mitzrayim, they sunk so low, they will ask, who is HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What's his name? Ma oimer eleihem, eheya asher eheya. And that is a shame found nowhere else in Torah, Nevi'im, and V'Ksuvim. Sichas Minchas Osha, I brought many interpretations of this shayna, but I just want to make one little point and share with you a word. So the two fundamental interpretations, Rashi, Eya imoim begola zeh, ve'eya amorim begola yisacheres. Tell your people, tell my children, I will be with them. They have nothing to be afraid of. It's a terrible golus. I will not forsake them. I will not forget them for a moment. Eya imoim begola zu, and I will always be with them. The Ramban quotes Rambam, and the Rambam is an amazing interpretation. I am because I am. I shall be because I shall be. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the creator. Any other creature is because there's a reason for it to be. Any other creature is because someone decided it should be. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is because he must be. He is because he is. No one created him. No one decided that he is to be. Eya asher aya. I am because I am. I shall be because I shall be. And that is a profound interpretation of the Rambam. But I want to share with you some divrei drush. Beautiful and amazing from Reb Shamshon Sapala, who was one of the great Mekabolim. Eya is Begematria 21. 21 times 21 is the Gematria of Emes. And that is Hashem Elokechem Emes. Kodesh Baruch Hu tells Moshe, Shmi Hashem lo nodati. This is a shame. I did not share with the others, only with Moshe Rabbeinu. In last week's parsha, Bikesh Yankov Lagalois es HaKates. Yankov Avinu, says Reb Shamshon Slapolo, was aware of the shame Eheya. And Yankov Avinu knew that Golos Mitzrayim is a punishment for Mechiras Yosef. He knew that 9 of his children were involved in the Mechira. Because Binyamin wasn't there. Yosef obviously was the victim. And Reuven wasn't present. And those that followed Yosef were Paigim in Shem Eheya. 9 times 21 is 189. Yaakov was convinced. Kates, 190. That is when they will be Zoichet to Geulas Mitzrayim. Bikesh Yaakov legalis es HaKates. Yaakov wanted to tell his children, we're almost there. 190 years and then the Geulas is over. Nestalko memeno shchino. Because the Medrash says, when the Shvotim sold Yosef, they made a chayrim prohibiting any of them to share this secret, this information with anyone in the world. And to make a chayrim, you need a minyan. So they were metzaref HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that was a grave transgression. Yaakov didn't know that. So Yaakov thought it's 9 times 21. Actually, it should be 10 times 21, which is 210. And Geulas Mitzrayim was 210 years. Not 189, but 210. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was Zoichet to Gilui Shechina, was not aware of the Shem Eheya till HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals the secret to Moshe. In the pasuk what I quoted, Ma oimer aleya, ma shemo. But Moshe Rabbeinu was familiar with the Shem Havaya, because we find that in the beginning of the parsha, in the first pasuk, Shem Havaya. On the other hand, Moshe Rabbeinu did know that there were Metzar of the Shechina. So Moshe's cheshbon was 10 times 26, 260. And that is when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe after 210 years, tell the people, the Geula is coming. He was disturbed. He understood that it'll take another 50 years. So why speak to them now about Geula if they're still going to suffer 50 years of Golus? V'yar Hashem ki sar lirois, sar samachleish, 260. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, Moshe, you have a mistake. It's not 10 times 26. It's not Shem Havaya, it's Shem Eheya. 210. The goal is near. Tell my children. to get prepared for the Geula. So when we read Sefer Hagolas v'Hageula, these days are mesugal for Yeshuas and for Nisim. They are defined as Yemei HaShoivavim. Shemois ve'eru boi b'shalach Yisrael mishpotim, and according to the Ari and other great Mekuborim, Yemei HaShoivavim are Yemei Zgula, for tshuva, for tikkun hamaisim, for tefillas. Let us all hope and pray that when we read Sefer HaGeulah, Golas v'Hageula, sheyukuyam banu ki ameitzeichem me'eretz Mitzrayim, arenu neflois, we should be zoichet to the Geula Shleim, and be as Mashiach Tzidkenu, b'mehero v'yomeinu, amen.